Hello, you're watching a recording of presentations made during the regionalization process for Middletown and Newport school districts, August 22nd and 23rd. This presentation is to be about 36 slides in total and should take about a half an hour to listen to in full. The presentation went through introductions on the team, the consulting team who's helping to project manage this work, the legislation itself, definitions of what exactly is regionalization and how is it moving forward, the transition team, looking at moving next steps if the November 8th election is successful, what would be some of the interim steps to get the new school committee, regional school committee, up to speed on recommendations for operations and academics. A review of July's presentation, looking at some case studies, some survey results, then looking at frequently asked questions throughout the process that have arisen, and then these meetings concluded with a live polling exercise. Neither meeting had time for small group discussions, and each meeting was 2 hours in length. The introductions: Jessica Goodell from Wilpert is the director and the project manager for this process. My name is David Sturtz. I'm with Cooperative Strategies assisting Jessica and the rest of the team in Middletown and Newport, along with my colleague Susan Miller. And the steering committee is made up of members of the town councils for Middletown and Newport, as well as the school districts of Middletown and Newport. The focus on this regionalization process is to look at the benefits known and potential for the students. When we look at the building program, when we look at the opportunities operationally and academically, the focus is how do we provide sustainably for the long period of time for the future the best educational opportunities for your students. The legislation, the background, is focused on the reimbursement aid that would come from the state. And we'll go into details later in the presentation as exactly how that materializes. But the brief is that the state offers a regionalization bonus incentive for capital projects up to 80.5%, which all in total, when you look at the principal and the interest for both Middletown and Newport, sums to just shy of $500 million over the life of the current plans. Second, looking at the legislation, it creates a regional district, which is a separate and distinct entity. It is one district. There are not two different districts, not two different sets of school systems. There is no dividing line at the point of this regionalization. It is one district with one school board or school committee and one administration and one set of teacher employees, one set of administrators, all the way up and down the chain. It is one district. The educational costs that will be paid to manage this district are made in proportion to the number of students. And so it's just like it is now based upon the number of students, so that the bill in that sense would not change in terms of operating the district. Middletown and Newport each contribute to the budget of this regional district based upon the number of students in their municipalities. The state aid state and federal aid will be credited towards each municipality's share of the educational costs, again, proportional to this number of students and those designated funds that are designated towards students who have particular subsidized funds, be it for special ed or English as a second language or so on and so forth. Those designated funds, as they always do, stay with the student. You can read the entire legislation on the project website, which is www.middletown-newport.us, about 15 pages in length. What does the regional school district leadership look like? We're talking about the school board or the school committee. The way that the legislation is written, and I encourage you to read it, is that it provides directly proportional leadership relationship between the school committee and a finance committee. The school committee is the elected body, just like each school district now has an elected body of representatives. This is no different. There would be 7 slots on this school committee. And as the elections go, all of those who would run for election will be running at large. And the top 3 vote getters from Middletown, the top 3 vote getters from Newport would win 3 seats each. Then for the 7th seat, that 7th seat would go to the remaining candidate who has the highest votes regardless of which community he or she comes from, thus resulting in a 4-3 school committee based upon where the school board members reside or the committee members reside. Then a regional finance committee is appointed by the Middletown and Newport town councils. You see that below, be the town manager as a designee, city manager designee, and then 2 members appointed by the council. And so that provides your 3-3 base committee. And then that 7th committee member is appointed based upon whoever's in the opposite municipality that the 7th regional school board member is in, thus creating always a 4-3-3-4 representation. So Middletown would have 4 folks on the regional school committee, then Newport would have 4 folks on the joint finance committee. These committees work in concert with each other to determine budgets to operate the district and to call for any future elections for bonds or levies. So the school committee and the joint finance committee have the authority in this regional district to call for future bonds, and the negotiations to come to those terms happen within this group. What is the November vote about? The November vote is really about whether the known and potential benefits of regionalizing are enticing enough to proceed and decide that that is the best educational opportunity. Those provide the best educational opportunities for the future of both communities. The known benefits have to do with the capital funding. As mentioned, we'll go into detail later, that totals to about just under $500 million in total state reimbursement, a ongoing operational transportation reimbursement, and then there are opportunities through the process for efficiencies operationally that are kept with the district to be used at the school committees and administration's discretion. Those potential operational savings come from going from 2 administrations down to 1. There would be 1 superintendent, 1 cabinet, 1 central administration for the regional school district. And secondly, with the capital planning, as will be gone into more detail later, there are significant operational saving opportunities through reduction in square footage of about 20% and a modernization of the facilities in the reduction of 1 facility in order to provide more operational cost savings into the future. So what exactly is regionalization? So the regionalization is about becoming 1 organizational administrative unit, pure and simple. That is, again, 1 school committee, 1 school superintendent, 1 school administration. And how that works is how that process would work is if the voters would approve that on November the 8th, then there would be a transition teams that would be constituted and are in the process right now of being solicited to provide direction on potential strategies for academics, facilities, operations. Then that team would work through summer of 2023, from about January through the summer of 2023, with elections for the regional committee members occurring on November 7th, 2023. Those members who are elected to that 7-member committee would begin their work 30 days later in December of 2023, working with the recommendations from the transition team and other inputs until July the 1st to create the operational plan, create and begin executing the operational plan, with the first day of business of the regional school district not being until July 1st of 2024. Transition team, as mentioned, working in the scopes of strategic planning for academics, operations/facilities. Again, would begin work on or about January of 2023, and may begin sooner at the discretion of the councils and the school administrations working together. These folks would work really in a series of 3 sprints. The first sprint being to look at data, to collect and look at data relevant to each of their tasks, academic or facilities, operations, transportation, and the like, and to consider what the data might be saying in terms of opportunities and challenges to address in each of their respective disciplines. Then the community would see a report on that data and some of those challenges and opportunities the data may present, providing their feedback at that time in late February, March timeframe. The second sprint, also about 2 months long, would look at the feedback from the community and the committees to create some draft options, some ideas about what to do about that data. Those options then would go back to the community for feedback. In the final couple months of the process, would consider all of the feedback to date to create some draft recommendations for the committee members to be. Those transition committees really see them in 3 different roles. One is focused on the academics, one is focused on the operations and facilities, and one would be an executive advisory committee, which would be similar to the current steering committee in this process. These are the superintendent leadership of both school districts, the town and city council presidents and board members, managers, who would oversee the work of the facility and operations and the academic advisory committees, providing their feedback along the way. Our team typically recommends for these kinds of processes a profile of committee members that spans sort of your at-large advisory groups. These folks, these are specialists in certain disciplines, be it finance, teaching and learning, so on and so forth, who are there really as experts in the fields that are relevant to the work. Also business and strategic partners, city, county officials, district administration, employees, your non-administration employees, your frontline employees, your higher end representatives, parents, principals, students, teachers, and trustee board members. So this is just a recommended profile for the current steering committee to take under advisement in creating these committees. Our recommendation is that these committees be solicited through invitation to different community and stakeholder groups throughout town, that an application process be instituted, and that those applications be vetted largely to ensure that the ultimate committee that is formed, is constituted, does represent a broad swath of the community and is not unduly concentrated in any one particular group. Looking back at the July presentation that was made in very brief form, looked at some case studies of previous regionalizations where there was sufficient data to look at before and after results academically and financially and otherwise. The cases were selected by myself and my team based upon that availability of data, and also looking at more recent cases of district regionalization. For those who may be wondering, the cases that in Rhode Island, for example, Riston Warren, about 30 years old, there was not sufficient data to really dive into what we can learn pre-post. So we looked at there's Twin Rivers, which was a consolidation of 4 different districts into one outside of Sacramento, Central Valley outside of Pittsburgh, and Texas City down there near Galveston. In all of those cases, you can look at the July report presentation for more details. What was noted is that there were benefits academically and operationally, financially, that could be demonstrated pre-post regionalization, and that those benefits were not immediate byproducts, necessary byproducts of the regionalization, but intentional decisions by those who were leading the districts at the time to seek out those savings, those benefits, those opportunities, and to reinvest them into the student experience through enhancing, expanding academic programs, through investing in joint facilities planning, joint academic planning, and ensuring that where operational savings were found, that they were directed to the student needs. Survey, we've been doing surveys along the way in June and July. And also here we did some polling during these meetings here in August. In June, asked the question about what you could hope to be gained for students in a combined regional district. And number one on that list was access to additional learning opportunities. Of those additional learning opportunities, the ones that were most important, according to those who took the survey, were STEM, career tech, and then were first and foremost, and then second to that were grouped visual performing arts, early childhood education. The July survey results, and that result had just under about 400 folks who participated. And this July survey results, about the same number, a little bit fewer, a similar profile of respondent as well. We do not know and did not ask for any identifying information, so we do not have any notions about who is responding to these surveys, just as whoever opted in to take the survey as promoted on the websites. What we did notice is that we asked between June and July level of support questions, recognizing that additional information will be forthcoming. What is your level of support for regionalization? Same question received a slightly higher degree of support, about 5 points higher, in the low 60% support amongst those taking the survey on August the 10th. In that July survey, we looked at the different programs themselves and in STEM and the arts and so forth, and pulled out some of the narrative comments that were representative of the kinds of comments that people were posting when asked these questions about their interest in the different programs. So for STEM, some of these representative quotes included looking for more courses for students at younger ages, having a continuum of programs from middle school through high school, looking at some regional STEM programs, and by regionalized, implied there that, and this was implied elsewhere, to ensure that there was equitable access in the event of regionalization, to ensure that students from wherever they lived had equitable access to the same high quality programs throughout this regionalized district. That was an important theme and has been an important theme in the comments to date. On the facility side, looking to the investments from the state and the bond planning here to provide larger classrooms for science classes, robotics, and cross-curricular courses, and just sort of underscoring quotes that underscored the importance of STEM in the future for not only kids in the region, but nationally. Career tech. Some of the quotes that came up was looking at automotive tech, culinary, engineering, welding trades, the hard, some of those hard engineering and construction trades that are in high demand, not only regionally but also nationally, as mentioned, and looking at providing courses and curriculum aligned with the current career and tech objectives to build off the strengths of the current program. And you see this quote again. I'll read this one in full. Quote, "Again, I would like to see programs combined in a way which gives students from both towns the greatest opportunity," end quote. Really can't underscore enough that if you're going to have a takeaway from folks' narrative responses across these surveys in June and July, that would be it. That folks are looking for equitable access to these high quality programs. Along the visual and performing arts, folks looking for formal courses of study, along with any other academic course, just like any other academic courses, to really institutionalize arts as a course of study. That is an opportunity for interdisciplinary program, which is a different take on the former quote, on that previous quote there, rather than maybe having a set aside formal course of study, rather embedding arts as a way to understand and study things like history and mathematics and science. And in other words, just have it be a way to address at a different angle the courses that are already in play. Frequently asked questions. These are questions that have emerged throughout the process when began community engagements in June, and will be continued to be refined through October as additional feedback is made. But today, questions that we've heard is: one, what would be the impact to teachers? Two, why the current timeline? Some folks have suggested there's a rush, and so we want to dive into the timeline. What does the district leadership, or what would the district leadership look like? What would be some potential academic impacts, some potential financial impacts, and what exactly would the state invest? How would they invest it? So on and so forth. You can see more frequently asked questions again on the project website, Middletown-Newport.us. So, what is or what would be the impact to teachers? Well, in the legislation, Section 4 there, focus on labor provisions, and very clearly states that current contracts that teachers have remain in force as written until their expiration date, or the renegotiated with the regionalized school district. Currently, teacher contracts, for example, are negotiated with separate teachers unions negotiating with separate school district administrations. Those contracts that have been created would remain until a regionalized committee is formed and is in office after July 1st of 2024. And then that committee at that time would begin negotiating new contracts with the teachers from both towns, Middletown and Newport. So you go from two different unions working with two different administrations to working with one administration, and that implies that there would be a combination or a joining of the teachers unions to bargain at that time. All of those employees that are employed to the date of before regionalization, so the day before June 30th, 2024, the exact language in the text is offered the same or substantially similar position. So there is no plans in the works to look at teacher layoffs as a result of utilization of a regionalization. To the contrary, all of those folks were employed up to the day before the district is constituted, keep their same or substantially similar position. That all folks would have full credit for their period of employment for the purposes of seniority pensions and whatnot. And again, the future negotiations would be with the regional school committee, which is empowered to make all financial, academic, logistical, and strategic plans and decisions for the school district. Why the timeline, or why the rush, in one way to phrase it? Well, in looking at the broad timeline, this regionalization has been discussed on and off for years, and this past spring, the town and city councils of Middletown and Newport passed majority passed resolutions calling for legislation to be created to enable a regionalized school district to be created, and that was passed by the state legislature. And to take advantage of the incentives that the state offers for school district regionalization, which includes primarily a regionalization bonus of 80.5%. The towns in Middletown would have to engage a contractor by December 30th of 2023, completing their work 5 years later to take advantage of that. Now, Middletown has not yet passed a bond for school district renovations and rebuilding. Newport has. Newport has broken ground on the new Rogers and has completed the Pell addition, with the completion of Rogers scheduled for December of 2025, and the beginning occupancy there the first fall of the regionalized district, should it come to pass. And as we'll go through in a couple of slides later, and we'll break down exactly how the benefits would flow. But the short answer is to take advantage of the state's investment in the community. The regionalization has to begin by July of 2024, and we would need to pass this November in order to have time to mobilize to get the contracting teams in place so that these timelines can be followed. Looking at any future election day, say a special date in the spring of 24, would not allow times to meet the deadlines for these reimbursements. What are the academic impacts? Taken pains to state throughout the process that the regionalized school committee and school administration that would be created, so the committee would be voted in, and then they would appoint a superintendent, and the superintendent would create the cabinet and the administration and so forth. Those bodies have the full authority to determine how they organize the school buildings themselves, the academic programs, and logistics, asking for future bonds. All of that is under the authority of the school committee. We're working in concert with the financial committee as a team. The academic impacts really are at this point looking at what could be, and looking at the total of the different advanced placement course offerings, the STEM offerings, the arts offerings, prep college and honors prep, and so on and so forth, where each current district has their requisite strengths in these offering areas, courses that the other does not, particularly when you look at the middle and high school programming. So when you look at the whole, there's quite a robust offering between the arts, the sciences, extracurriculars, and advanced placement, with collaboration already happening, that has been happening in things like theater, in the different honors courses, and in different athletic offerings and so forth, due to enrollment sizes and trying to provide the most opportunities for students. So the academic benefits will really be determined by the leadership and how they identify those opportunities and fund those opportunities. The financial impacts. We looked at the total spend by district for districts that currently are similarly enrolled, have similar enrollment sizes as Middletown and Newport would combined, or about 4,000 students. Those include Coventry, Cumberland, North Kingstown, and West Warwick. When you strip away all of the unique student funds from federal and other state aids that are particular to each student, like for English as a second language, free and reduced lunch, and those kinds of things, and look just at that base funding per student, you'll see the green bars represent those expenditures per student for currently between Middletown and Newport. The orange bars below show that of the comparison, and those purple dotted lines show what the state averages are. So in brief, what this shows is that currently Middletown and Newport spend more on instruction than the comparison groups. They spend more on instructional support, more on operations, more on the other commitments like fixed fees, pensions, and so forth, and more on leadership. And what we're modeling in those circled numbers to the right of each of these bar charts is potential savings based upon the differences between Middletown and Newport now as two separate entities, and what could be as one entity based upon the average spend of the other districts. What's noteworthy here is that there's no savings anticipated at the instructional level, at the teacher level. No model for losing teachers or reducing teacher staff or cutting teacher pay or anything of that nature. In fact, rather looking at a probable addition of spending at the instructional level, as Middletown and Newport currently spend less on, for example, instructional tech than the comparison group. But in the other areas that have more of an administrative function, there are anticipated savings that can come to pass. When you sum those up and subtract out the additional spend that is modeled at the classroom level, that comes to about $1,200 a student multiplied by just less than 4,000 students gives you $4.8 million annually. Now cutting that in half to provide a range gives you a range of about $2.5 to about $4.8 potential million in annual operational savings to run the district when looking at how the comparison districts spend in each of those different administrative categories. The regional school district portfolio. How would the regional district look physically? Well, that is largely influenced by the capital plan right now that is in play in Newport and proposed in Middletown. So currently, there are 7 schools operating across both towns, operating about 783,000 square feet, with the average weighted square foot, the average weighted age of each building being 1960. The plan in Middletown for their facilities plan is to rebuild Forest Avenue and Aquidneck Elementary School as one, so to consolidate elementary schools, and to rebuild the middle and high schools together, separate schools on the same site, on the current Gaudet site, Gaudet Middle School site. So what that does is it reduces the number of school sites. You actually go to 5 operational schools on 6 physical sites. So you're really getting a change, less 2 operational schools, less 1 physical site. That physical site reduction loses 131,000 square feet, so you're getting more efficient in that sense, so 20% less square feet. And after looking at all of the investments between both towns, the average weighted square foot goes from 1960 to 2003, or 43 years worth of modernization. So looking at energy efficiency inherent in modernizing schools from that era to that amount. Not to mention the 20% reduction in total square feet to operate. How much would the state invest? Well, currently Middletown, not having a bond for their school program, would look at a deferred maintenance plan, just looking to raise funds locally in a separate levy in the future to address building deferred maintenance. So we're talking about roofs that have expired and need fixed, HVAC systems that have expired and need fixed, interior systems, so on and so forth. But there would not be the bonding capacity in a standard GEO bond to rebuild the schools as currently proposed with the state aid. Newport has passed the bond with a principal owed of $98.5 million. You add the interest to that, that's 164. Hence, the current debt owed by the Newport Committee is $78 million, with the state kicking in currently 52.5% for that. If regionalized, there you look at the $164 million for Newport's levy, or bond rather, and the proposed bond for Middletown, $449.5 million principal and interest, totaling $613.7 million. The state picking up 80.5% of that, pick up 494, just shy of $500 million. This means that for the $613 million investment in both communities, Newport's share drops from $78 million owed to $32 million owed, which practically means that as the bills are currently coming due for Newport's bond, rather than having citizens in Newport paying off a $78 million bond, they would be paying off a $32 million bond. So that's significant savings there. And for Middletown, the total bond for them, just under $450 million, would owe $87.5 million, 87.6 to be exact. That is on the capital side. The operations, when you look at the potential savings there operationally based upon like districts in Rhode Island, like size districts rather, the transportation allotment, which is in perpetuity, $1.1 million from the state, a regional bonus, which just transpires for the first couple of years and then is fairly nominal in the grand scheme of things. But the total there is a potential of up to 7%. So if you look at an annual operating budget savings, really, practically speaking, you're probably looking 3 to 5% as things shake out to be a little bit more conservative. At this point in the presentation, a live polling exercise was done to go through the FAQs and ask stakeholders who were present for their feedback and questions, any remaining questions on those topics that were just reviewed. Thank you for taking time to listen to this presentation. Look forward to seeing you in future engagements.